Yo, what's going on? So, back at it. Here we go. First kind of real podcast bloggy thing from 2020. And what's the story with it? So, I wanted to give you a little update on what we did last week. We ran a coaching session for our class assistants. So, we run a class assistant program, and this coaching session is to give them some of the skills and maybe pass on some of the skills about coaching Taekwondo, not just doing Taekwondo. So I wanted to give you a little overview of what that was, how that went, why we did it, and what the class assistants are for and what they do, and sort of talk to you a little bit about that. And maybe this will be really useful for coaches who are trying to scale their club size, trying to grow the size, and trying to figure out how to deal with that problem of, I have lots of students at very different grades and I don't really know how to deal with it. And then, it'll form a larger... it'll form a part of a larger kind of conversation. I'm going to start around coaching philosophies and topics as well. So we'll do a little bit next week on sort of coaching method, constraints-led approach that Richie Ford from the TKD Coach Academy switched me on to there last August. I've been doing a lot of research on that, and it's really interesting and fascinating. So I want to do a little blog and podcast about that as well, so you can have a talk about that and a think about that. But this one is about our class assistants and our coaching and how we do that and what that's for. So in Carrig we have classes for children, classes for adults and teenagers as well. And the kids classes they can be large, so from anywhere from kind of 15, 16 students up to 30 plus, right? Depending on the day, depending on the time of year, all of this kind of stuff. So these classes run sort of side by side. We have two groups. We have a 5 to 7 year olds section and an 8 to 12 year old section, and those two classes run at the same time in the same hall, divided by a curtain. So it's busy. It's busy, and there's a lot of students there at sort of 6:30, 7:30 on a Tuesday and Thursday. That's a busy time for us. In fact, probably 7:30 when those two classes finish and the seniors and cadets kind of come in. It's the busiest time. So how do we deal with this? How do we scale this? How do we grow this? How do we make sure that the standard across the club is still high, is still we're still ticking all the boxes for all the different grades and all the different, and the people are, especially kids, that they're having fun and that they're enjoying their training, right? Because that's really what at this age, that's what that's about, for me anyway. So we have two black belts. Myself and Miss O'Connor, my wife, who's actually out at the moment. We have Miss Clark from Greystone Taekwondo, who's been in coaching for us this year, and she's been really, really great, and we're really, really grateful. So shout out Miss Clark. But also, so we have two black belts to run two classes, and that's kind of okay. You can do that, that works. But and it's a common problem. You'll probably see it. Anyone who's a coach or instructor has probably seen this. It's like, okay, I have a large class. My lowest grade is white belt, new beginner, has done 1-2 weeks of classes, and my highest grade is 4 or 5 years into it, blue red belt, something like that, right? And that's the spread. And I don't have enough blue and red belts to do a blue red belt class, nor do I have enough white and yellow belts to do just a beginner's class. And I kind of have enough of each grade to make one class. But not enough to split it out into 2 classes yet, or 3 classes yet. And that causes a whole other section of problems, like, okay, well, your time is changing from Tuesday to Wednesday now because that's what your class is, and I have football on Wednesday, or whatever it might be, right? So that's a problem. And if by moving them to a different day you lose them, is there much point in moving them to begin with, right? So that's a whole other discussion, and I'd like to know how other people have solved that, if they have, because we're at that point a little bit now in Carrig. So one of the ways we decided to address this is to bring in assistants and class assistants. And we're not the only club that does this. I've seen this before, right? So you bring in some of your adults or your cadets from the adults and cadets class, and you bring them in as assistants in the class, right? So these are of a certain grade. Obviously you can't just be a white belt 2 weeks into your training as a cadet or an adult to say, okay, I'll go help you coach now or whatever. That's not how it flies. You have to have a couple of years experience, so we don't really let them in unless they're kind of after green belt. Sort of blue would be ideal, but a necessity sometimes. I mean, for now we have a lot of blue tag, red tag kind of coaches, assistants in that class, in Carrig in the doggy sessions. Cabinteely not so much, because it's not big enough yet to warrant having an assistant there, right? But certainly in Dalkey we have 2 assistants per session, so that means there's 2 black belts with 2 assistants in each class, and this is really useful for many reasons. Like, first of all, you have more eyes, right? So you see more because you have more people and you have more awareness of the environment, right? And that's useful from a load of point of views, from feedback from in terms of, okay, such and such is missing this, so and so is missing that, and also from just a injury awareness point of view, safety point of view. You have more eyes on the class, right? And that's great. So what do we do with it? How do they work? What's their role in the class, right? They're there to assist the main instructor, right? So they will do things like, instead of me running around picking up woggles or picking up pads or picking up whatever it is it's like, would you grab them while we set the next drill up? And that these kind of things that make the class run more efficiently. But also we give them kind of coaching roles as well, right? They're there to observe. They're there if we're doing a group section in the lines, whatever it is. They're there to wander around as well. I mean, blue belts know what a walking stance is. They know how to help 8, 9, 10-year-old white yellow belt fix the back foot in walking stance. So they'll wander around the class too, and that way they can give kind of instruction and feedback in that way. So your back foot needs to point this way or whatever it might be, right? From time to time, we'll split them out and let them take the whole section under supervision. It's like, you do the 5-minute warm-up. We're doing a kicking class. It needs to be a warm-up specific to kicking. Okay. And then they figure out what it is and they'll go and do the warm-up, whatever. We also split them out into sections sometimes by grade. So this is the big problem for a lot of instructors. Is like, I have a wide disparate collection of grades and I don't know how to cover all of the syllabus in my 1 hour class. So the class assistants are really useful for that point of view, because you can split the section and say, you have all of the white belts, you have all of the yellow tags, I need you to run through Chongji, I need you to run through Saijuji, or whatever it might be, and then the other ones can be worked on straight away on Dangon or Wanyo, or whatever is being covered, right? So you can tailor the coaching to the grade, right? So you're getting specific training from relevant to what it is. But it's a double-edged sword, right? Because now you're in the situation where you don't have, it's not like you have 3 black belts that are qualified assistant instructors and have all the coaching skill sets that you need. That you have people that are competent, but they're not necessarily coaches, right? And you're giving them charge with, you're doing this and you're doing this, and we'll always supervise and kind of wander around and make sure things are going right. But there's that risk that you're missing knowledge, or that the wrong information is being imparted, or in the wrong way, right? And that's something that we tried to address with this coaching day the other day. Because you have people who have skill set that are, like I said, they're competent enough in Taekwondo. They understand the basics, they understand the fundamentals, but not necessarily how to impart it, right? So what do? They default to what they've seen. So they default to using the language and the skill and the exercises that we would deliver in our teenagers and our adults class, right? And that's fine, but it's not the same for our kids, right? Our kids aren't mini adults. So when you have this approach that's been consumed by the coaches that are the assistants that are helping us, because they know no better, and applied to the children, then you miss that there's a disconnect there, right? So we wanted to address that on the coaching weekend as well. So it wasn't the weekend, it was a couple of hours. So last Sunday we got all of our assistants together, and we sort of said, right, what's going on? Let's talk coaching. Let's talk what ways of coaching and ways you can help when you're in charge of a little group. Tools you can use and things you can use. And we talked a little bit about what coaching is and what coaching is for, what we need as coaches, how we coach. We did all this sort of stuff. We specifically, we talked a lot about praise and stuff, and when the right way is to praise, and the difference between saying that's good, you're a great, good job, and tangible feedback that makes sense to people, especially kids. This idea of the sort of praise sandwich that you might have heard being used before. Really good kick, keep your knee higher, and then your kick will be better, or whatever it is. And that's one method of feedback. The idea of open questioning as well. It's like, somebody tell me about walking stance, or can you tell me about this, or stuff that isn't a yes no question, right? Do you understand? Yeah, everyone says yeah. So it's like these kind of just stuff that coaches that have a bit of experience will know straight away to hand. But if you don't have, if somebody's never told you, you won't have it, right? So this is to try and plug all those holes, and also to make it a forum for questioning. How do I deal with this problem? How do I deal with the one kid that won't stop running around? And how do I deal with this and that? These kind of problems. We also talked a little bit about the difference between building technique and building technique for situation. So, knowing the level you're playing to, And we'll get into this next week with the whole constraints and environment design and all of this. We spent a little bit of time on that. We looked at how to coach fundamentals. We looked at what to look for, how to fix things, instead of fixing everything and zooming in very, very narrow, keeping a wider focus on where you're positioned, in the class. These sort of things that, again, are natural and intuitive to coaches with experience, but not so to people who don't have them, and then we did a little bit about, the types of what to look for in patterns, how to coach a bit of patterns, what to look for in sparring, how to coach a bit of sparring, methods and techniques for things like, decision-making games versus, just techniques. Also, we talked a lot about, stretching and what stretching is and how the difference between dynamic stretching, static stretching, isometrics, when to use what to use, these kind of things. And yeah, that kind of was just, it was a really good day, and the feedback was really, really good from the assistants. Like, okay, now I get this, and now I understand that, and that was really, really good, and I feel more confident to help now, and I feel more confident to do this. I mean, it's important to know that they're still not coaches. Like, they're not going. I'm not calling them up on a Tuesday and saying, I'm not coming in tonight, you do it. That's not how it works, right? They're assistants that are there to help for very short, specific periods in the class. The majority of the class is still done with the lead instructor with help, but it makes such a difference having two people there that can, if you're doing a line drill where you have 3 or 4 lines, instead of having one long line of 30 waiting for their go, you can split that out. For things like, if you're running a special technique class, it helps to have two lines, like for flying front kick. If you were looking at our videos this week, we had 2 teams doing flying side kick over pads, and we were able to split that into 2 groups because we had the assistants in the class. So now the time to action is quicker, right? And again, it's like I said, your assistants have enough fundamental knowledge of Taekwondo to help, but not necessarily enough to design a full class or a full session, and we wouldn't expect that of them either, right? It's more a question of, I need you to look at the white belts, I need you to do your parallel stance punch, and I'll be back to you in 3 minutes, take these 5, go, and sir, I need you to look at this and that, and that's the way it is. And one of the things I suppose I always have to watch then about that is, it's a little bit of, like I said, you can be, if you're the highest grade, you automatically think, well, I better go and teach the high grade stuff. I better go work with the green belts because they need all that. I'm actually starting to see it the other way now. It's like, if I have blue belts, maybe I'll say, will you look at Wanya with their green belts for 5 minutes while I take the beginners and make sure that the baseline is really, really solid. I'm starting to think that, the less experienced players need the best coaches, and the more experienced players don't need as high a quality of coach. I mean, they do. Like, we all want the best quality coach, but I'm trying to balance that line there. I was listening to a podcast recently, and they were talking about how, the best players on the A teams get picked and they all go up to the A level and they all get the best coaches, and that's why the gap at youth explodes so much, that the best players who've had access to the best coaches all throughout their development become the best players, and the ones that were, on the B or C or D squad and whatever, never got the best coaching, never got the right skills, and never really got the same chance to develop like the other players up here. So that's something that's in the back of my head now when I'm thinking about coaching. But look, this is just a strategy we've deployed in Carrig. We have class assistants that help us run the session and run the section, and it's been really, really useful. It's been really, really good. And of course, we've had to make sure then that all of our class assistants have the things that we expect our instructors to have with as much as they can. So they've all been Garda vetted, they've all done first aid, they have the same sort of standard. The only thing they can't do is the full coaching qualification, until they're 16 and blue belts. And now that we have some blue belts in the club, they can go and take this in September, and they'll be a further step on the ladder there, it's just a really, really valuable asset, having people that you trust in the club, that understand the ethos of the club, to help you build that and grow that, and then in the long run, the idea is to build these instructors up over time, so that when they go to black belt and they've done their level 1 and they've done their intro to coaching, and they're 17, 18 and they're going off to college, and they don't want to be world champions, or they do want to be world champions, or whatever their ambition is, they have the chance then to the club can then grow and expand, and we can say, okay, you're off in college and you can go and work in a bar and make minimum wage, or you can come and teach Taekwondo and you make some money this way, you know what I mean? And it's a whole other avenue that maybe wasn't available to people, and this is the master plan, right? So I just think it's a really good way of of growing instructors in the long run. You know, it's definitely a long game for me here. It's not something that I expect to see turned around in a year or even in sort of 3 years. You know, I think it's a 5-10 year job, and then we'll see if this works, right? We'll see if this idea of class assistants becoming assistant instructors, becoming outright instructors themselves, comes to fruition, and we'll see if we actually get a lot more people through the coaching sections, and are we growing instructors? And yeah, it's a nice one. It's a nice, as opposed to I'm just building athletes that are going to be champions, right? I mean, we can do that, and we should do that, and we want to do that. We can, if they want to, when they say to me, "Look, Mr. O'Connor, I want to go on. I want to really compete, and I want to be the best I can, and you know, challenge for spots on national squads and world championships and whatever." Fine, okay, let's drive you that way. And other people are like, you know what? I'm not competitively geared. I want to just go into coaching or umpiring or whatever. Now we have a system in place that facilitates that, you know. So it's worth a shot. It's worth a try. I'd be really interested to know how other people deal with large classes and wide splits in grades, and if this is something you employ in your class or if not, or how you get around that, you know. Yeah, so that's it. Food for thought on that. That's our class season. That was our coaching day. You know, it was definitely useful. Definitely something. If you are going to bring assistants in to help you with your class, you should take a few hours and sort of talk to them about how to run this and how to do this, and unless they have a wealth of coaching experience already, which probably not, right? So, but that's my advice. If you're bringing class assistants in from your club, sit down with them for 3 hours or 4 hours, some, you know, morning at the weekend if you have that time, and talk through how you coach, how you do things, what you expect, and give them a chance. We did a lot of scenarios last Sunday where it's like, okay, you go, let's all line up, okay, you teach walking stance, okay, you teach this, okay, and then we can give you direct feedback. So, you know, you did this, you did that, you did that. Just a chance to coach the coach, right? It was a really useful opportunity from that point of view. So I would recommend doing it if you're going to do that, and that's just me. So that's what I said. So we're back now, trying to get a few podcasts out and a few video logs every week. I'm going to try and get weekly at the moment. Next week we'll look at a constraints-led approach. Really, really interesting topic about how to coach. It's one that I've been meaning to do for a while, but I wanted to get my research sort of ducks in a row before I went on to it. And a few other bits in the pipeline, talking to people, trying to get kind of interview sessions done with people. And yeah, that should be really exciting if we get the time. And it's just trying to align calendars at the moment is a disaster. But yeah, that's the plan for that. And yep, we're off to Munster Open in 2 weeks' time. Competition. We're into the competition season, national competition season. Munster then Dublin. Should be fun. Should be great. AGM this Sunday for the Irish Taekwondo Association. That's tomorrow. Should be fun. We'll go down and see what's what with that. So yep, give us a like and a share and a comment and all. We're on Facebook and Instagram and everything else. YouTube and TikTok and whatever else there is out there. We're probably there. So if you like what we're doing, please give it a like, give it a share and all that, and let people know. Cool. I hope you found this interesting. Talk to you soon. Bye bye.